On a brisk morning, a small yet resolute puppy wandered into a bustling town square. It barked at passers-by and tugged at pant legs, but it wasn't seeking food or shelter. Its mission was far greater. When a compassionate young man finally followed the puppy, he encountered a heartbreaking scene that would forever alter his life. What could have driven such bravery in this tiny creature? The morning was crisp, with a light mist swirling around the cobblestone streets of Silverwood, a quaint town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. The locals were beginning their day, shopkeepers arranging displays, children rushing to school, and farmers unloading produce at the lively market square. Amidst the activity, a small golden-furred puppy darted through the crowd, its paws barely making a sound on the cobblestones. Its coat was matted with dirt, and its dark eyes darted frantically, scanning the unfamiliar faces of the townsfolk. Despite its disheveled appearance, the puppy exuded determination. It barked sharply at anyone nearby, as though trying to communicate. Most people ignored it, dismissing it as another stray, but the puppy persisted. A young man named Adrian, a university student home on break, stood near a cafe, sipping coffee and enjoying the morning sun. He noticed the puppy weaving through the crowd and barking insistently, its small frame trembling, not from cold but from urgency. Intrigued, Adrian crouched down and called out, "Hey there, little one, are you lost?" The puppy immediately locked eyes with him and barked again, louder this time, before tugging at his pant leg. Adrian laughed softly, assuming the dog was hungry, and tore off a piece of his croissant. But the puppy ignored the food entirely, barking again and tugging harder, glancing back toward the edge of the square as if urging him to follow. Adrian's curiosity piqued. "What's up, buddy? You want me to go with you?" he asked, standing up and letting the puppy lead him. It darted ahead, pausing every few steps to ensure he was following. The crowd seemed to fade away as Adrian left the square, his coffee abandoned on a bench. The puppy led him down a narrow, winding path toward the woods. Adrian hesitated for a moment, the cheerful noises of the town now replaced by the rustle of leaves and distant bird songs. But the puppy's urgency was contagious, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something important awaited him at the end of this strange journey. Adrian followed the puppy deeper into the woods, the cheerful bustle of the town fading behind him. The narrow path was overgrown with roots snaking across the ground and leaves crunching underfoot. The puppy kept glancing back, its tail wagging slightly, as if to ensure he was still following. Each bark seemed to urge him on, though the air grew cooler and the trees more imposing with every step. The young man couldn't help but wonder what had driven the tiny dog to approach him. "What are you trying to show me, heh?" he murmured, stepping over a fallen branch. Despite his curiosity, a sense of unease began to creep in. The deeper they went, the less familiar the forest felt. Adrian had grown up in Silverwood and knew its outskirts well, but this trail was new to him, hidden, forgotten, or perhaps simply unnoticed all these years. Finally, the puppy stopped at a clearing, panting heavily but refusing to sit. It barked again, its small body trembling as it stared intently at a patch of underbrush. Adrian stepped closer, brushing aside the branches and brambles. What he saw made him gasp. Lying on the ground was a larger dog, its golden fur streaked with mud and its body partially hidden by leaves. It was clear she had been there for some time. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes half closed, and her left hind leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Around her, Adrian noticed painful tangles of barbed vines and thorns cutting into her skin. Despite her condition, she lifted her head weakly at the sight of Adrian and her puppy. "Oh no," Adrian whispered, his heart sinking. He knelt beside the injured dog, careful not to startle her. The puppy whined and nuzzled against its mother, clearly distressed. "Hey there, girl," Adrian said softly. "It's okay. I'm going to help you." Adrian quickly assessed the situation. The dog was dehydrated and weak, her injuries likely from a desperate attempt to free herself from the thorny vines. The tangled vegetation was dense, and Adrian realized it would take considerable effort to remove it without causing further pain. He cursed under his breath, wishing he'd brought his phone. He needed help. He looked at the puppy, who was now licking its mother's face, trying to comfort her. "You did well, little one," he said gently, scratching the pup behind the ears. "But I can't do this alone." Without hesitation, Adrian stood and scanned the area. In the distance, he spotted a wooden structure, a small, dilapidated shed he hadn't noticed before. Perhaps there were tools inside that could help. He told the puppy, "Stay here and keep her company. I'll be right back." The shed, though weathered and overrun with moss, was sturdier than it appeared. Inside, Adrian found an assortment of old gardening tools and supplies. A pair of rusted shears caught his eye, along with a coil of rope. They weren't ideal, but they'd have to do. He also spotted a dusty bottle of water on a shelf. It was sealed, and though the label was faded, it looked clean enough to use. Hurrying back to the clearing, Adrian set to work. He used the shears to carefully cut away the thorny vines, his hands steady despite the difficulty of the task. The injured dog flinched occasionally, letting out soft whimpers, but Adrian spoke to her in a calming voice, reassuring her with every snip of the shears. "It's okay, girl. You're going to be all right. Just hang in there." Once the vines were removed, Adrian gently washed the dog's wounds with the water, using his jacket sleeve to pat them dry. The puppy watched intently, as if understanding the importance of every action. When Adrian finished, he fashioned a makeshift splint for her leg using a sturdy stick and the rope he'd found. The dog's breathing began to even out, her eyes showing a flicker of gratitude. Adrian smiled, relieved that his efforts seemed to be making a difference. "You're a tough one, aren't you?" he said, stroking her head. "Now, we just need to get you somewhere safe." Lifting the dog carefully, Adrian was struck by how light she was. Malnutrition had taken its toll, and her once strong frame was now frail. The puppy walked beside him, its tail wagging slightly as they began the trek back toward the town. Adrian knew it wouldn't be easy. Carrying the injured dog through the uneven forest terrain was a challenge, and his arms ached after only a few minutes. But he pressed on, driven by the thought of getting her the care she needed. Adrian trudged through the forest, each step deliberate as he carried the injured dog in his arms. Her weight was modest, but the strain of navigating uneven ground while ensuring her safety was starting to take its toll. The puppy trotted faithfully at his side, occasionally darting ahead before circling back, as if to encourage Adrian to keep moving. As they neared the edge of the forest, the sounds of the town began to filter through the trees, distant voices, the hum of cars, and the occasional bark of a neighborhood dog. Adrian let out a breath of relief. They were close. The veterinary clinic, located just off the town square, would be their destination. The dog stirred slightly in his arms, her eyes fluttering open for a moment before closing again. "Hang in there, girl," Adrian whispered. "We're almost there." The puppy barked softly, as if echoing his reassurance. When they finally emerged from the woods, Adrian's appearance drew immediate attention. A few passers-by stopped in their tracks, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. One elderly woman approached, clutching her purse. "Young man, is that dog all right?" she asked, her voice trembling. "She's hurt," Adrian replied, shifting the dog in his arms. "I found her trapped in the woods. I'm taking her to the vet." The woman nodded, her eyes softening. "Bless you. Poor thing looks like she's been through a lot." She glanced down at the puppy, who wagged its tail at her. "You're doing a good thing, dear." Adrian offered a quick smile of thanks and continued on his way, his focus unwavering. The streets of Silverwood were familiar, but the journey to the clinic felt longer than usual. His arms ached, and beads of sweat trickled down his brow. Still, he refused to slow down. The bell above the clinic door jingled as Adrian pushed it open with his shoulder. The reception area was bright and clean, the air tinged with the faint smell of antiseptic. A young woman in scrubs looked up from the desk, her eyes widening at the sight before her. "Is she hurt?" the receptionist asked, standing quickly. "Yes," Adrian said, his voice urgent. "She's injured and weak, and this little one led me to her." He nodded toward the puppy, who stood at his feet, wagging its tail nervously. The receptionist called into the back, and within moments, a veterinarian appeared. Dr. Evelyn Harper, a woman in her mid-40s with kind eyes and an air of calm authority, approached. "Let's get her to an exam room," she said, motioning for Adrian to follow. In the room, Adrian gently laid the dog on the exam table. Dr. Harper began her assessment immediately, her hands moving deftly as she checked for additional injuries. "You did a good job stabilizing her leg," she noted, glancing at Adrian. "Where did you find her?" Adrian explained the situation, recounting how the puppy had led him to the injured dog in the forest. Dr. Harper listened intently, her expression grave. "It's a good thing you brought her in. She's severely dehydrated and malnourished. Her injuries are manageable, but she's going to need time and care to recover." The puppy whined softly, standing on its hind legs to peer over the edge of the table. Adrian smiled despite the tension in the room. "Looks like someone's worried about their mom." Dr. Harper chuckled. "A loyal little one, isn't he? They'll both be all right with the right care." She turned to the receptionist. "Get N4 started for fluids and prep the X-ray machine. I want to confirm there's no internal damage." As the clinic staff moved efficiently, Adrian stepped back, giving them space to work. He watched as the dog was carefully hooked up to the fall, her breathing becoming steadier. The puppy, unwilling to be separated, lay down near the table, its watchful eyes never leaving its mother. Dr. Harper approached Adrian again. "You've done more than most people would have in your situation. It's not every day someone carries an injured dog through the woods to get help." Adrian shrugged, feeling a bit self-conscious. "I couldn't just leave her there. And the little guy," he gestured to the puppy, "he wouldn't have let me." Dr. Harper smiled warmly. "Well, you've saved 2 lives today. That's something to be proud of." As the staff at the clinic tended to the injured dog, Adrian leaned against the wall, observing the scene unfold. The puppy, still vigilant, stayed close to its mother's side. Dr. Harper worked meticulously, her focus unwavering as she examined the X-rays displayed on a nearby monitor. Adrian's thoughts wandered, reflecting on the strange circumstances that had brought him here. The forest, the unexpected discovery, and the determined puppy. It all felt surreal. His musings were interrupted when Dr. Harper approached him, her expression serious yet tinged with curiosity. "Adrian, wow," she began, holding a clipboard. "There's something unusual about this case." He straightened, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Dr. Harper gestured to the X-rays. "While her injuries are consistent with being trapped, I also found signs of previous trauma. Her body shows evidence of old fractures that have healed improperly." Adrian's stomach sank. "You mean she's been hurt before?" Dr. Harper nodded. "Yes, and not by accident. These injuries suggest she may have been mistreated or involved in something dangerous. Additionally," she hesitated, flipping through the pages on her clipboard, "I scanned for a microchip, and she has one. It's registered to a name, but the address is out of state." Adrian's curiosity piqued. "Who does she belong to?" Dr. Harper handed him a sheet of paper. The name Eleanor Fisher was printed at the top, followed by an address in a neighboring state. "The name matches a woman who reported her dog missing 2 months ago. I'll contact her to confirm, but this might explain how the dog ended up here." Adrian's mind raced. If the dog was from out of state, how had she made it to Silverwood? And what about the puppy? Was it hers, or had it simply found her in the forest and taken her under its wing? The questions weighed heavily as Dr. Harper stepped away to make the call. Adrian glanced at the puppy, who was now sitting beside him, its wide eyes looking up as if sensing his unease. Minutes later, Dr. Harper returned, her expression unreadable. "I reached Eleanor Fisher. She confirmed the dog's description and the microchip number. Her name is Daisy. Eleanor's been searching for her ever since she went missing during a camping trip near a river about 100 miles from here." Adrian felt a pang of relief at the prospect of Daisy being reunited with her owner, but Dr. Harper's expression told him there was more to the story. What else did she say? She mentioned that Daisy was her late husband's dog, a military veteran who passed away last year. Daisy was his companion, and they had a bond unlike anything she's seen before. Losing Daisy has been a devastating blow for her. Adrian nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Does she know about the puppy?" Dr. Harper's gaze softened. "That's the part she couldn't explain. She had no idea Daisy might have had puppies or if this one is even hers. It adds another layer to this mystery." The revelation sent a ripple of emotion through Adrian. The idea that Daisy had endured so much loss, injury, and separation, only to survive and potentially become a mother, was both heartbreaking and inspiring. "What's next?" Adrian asked, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts. "We'll keep Daisy here to recover and arrange for Eleanor to come as soon as possible," Dr. Harper said. "As for the puppy, we'll need to test their connection to confirm if it's hers. Either way, he's not leaving her side anytime soon." Adrian looked down at the small dog, who yawned and curled up at his feet. "I don't think he's going anywhere." As Daisy settled into the clinic's care, Adrian began to feel a sense of temporary relief. Yet, the mystery surrounding her journey and the little puppy by her side nagged at him. How had a dog tied to a veteran's legacy ended up injured and alone in a forest? And what about the puppy? Was he a random stray, or did he hold a deeper connection to Daisy's story? The next morning, Adrian returned to the clinic to check on Daisy and the puppy. Dr. Harper greeted him with a tired smile. "She's stable, but there's something you should know," she began, motioning him toward the exam room. Inside, Daisy rested on a padded bed, her leg now in a proper splint. The puppy lay curled beside her, his small body rising and falling in rhythm with hers. Dr. Harper knelt down and ran her hand along Daisy's back. "While cleaning her wounds last night, I found a second tag hidden under her collar. It's engraved with a number and a symbol that looks like a military insignia. Adrian's eyes widened. You think it's related to her previous owner? Dr. Harper nodded. Possibly. It could be a unit code or something similar. I've reached out to a local veterans organization to see if they can help identify it. Adrian crouched beside Daisy, gently stroking her head. She's been through so much. If this leads to answers, it'll be worth it. As they spoke, the clinic doorbell jingled, and a staff member called out, Dr. Harper, there's someone here asking about the dog. Adrian exchanged a glance with Dr. Harper, a mix of curiosity and caution passing between them. They walked to the front desk, where a man in his late 50s stood. His weathered face was framed by a gray beard, and he wore a faded jacket with patches sewn onto it, suggesting a history of military service. Can I help you? Dr. Harper asked, her tone polite but guarded. The man nodded. I'm Daniel. I work with the local veterans group. You mentioned a dog with a military tag. Dr. Harper gestured toward the exam room. Yes, we have her here. She was injured in the forest but is recovering. Do you recognize this? She handed him a photo of the tag and insignia. Daniel studied it intently before his expression shifted. This is from a K9 unit that operated overseas about a decade ago. These dogs were trained for search and rescue missions as well as bomb detection. Adrian's curiosity deepened. You're saying Daisy might have been a service dog? Daniel nodded. It's likely. And if that's the case, her training could explain how she survived the injuries and made it out of wherever she was. These dogs are remarkably resilient. Dr. Harper asked, do you know how we might confirm her history? Daniel hesitated. There's a database, but accessing it isn't easy. It's restricted to handlers and certain military personnel. I can reach out to a few contacts and see what I can find. Adrian couldn't help but feel a surge of admiration for Daisy. If she truly was a former service dog, her story was even more extraordinary than he had imagined. While Daniel made calls and shared updates with Dr. Harper, Adrian returned to the exam room. The puppy perked up at his presence, bounding over with a wagging tail. Adrian crouched to pet him, feeling a growing connection to the little dog. Hey, buddy, Adrian murmured. You've been through a lot too, huh? You're a brave little guy. As Adrian spent time with Daisy and the puppy, an idea began to form in his mind. If Daisy's history could be uncovered, it might help explain how she ended up in the forest and bring closure to her owner, Eleanor. But it also raised another question. What if Daisy wasn't just a survivor but also a hero with a story that needed to be shared? The following day, Adrian arrived at the clinic early, greeted by a calm, almost serene atmosphere. Daisy was resting, her injuries slowly healing, while the puppy lay sprawled beside her. Adrian noticed a shift in Daisy's demeanor. Her eyes, though tired, seemed more trusting. It was as if she sensed the safety and care surrounding her. Daniel entered shortly after, carrying a worn notebook and an old photograph. He looked at Adrian and Dr. Harper with a sense of urgency. I've got some news, he began, setting the notebook on the counter. I reached out to an old handler from the unit Daisy might belong to. He confirmed the tag matches a dog named Stella. If this is her, she was retired from active duty 5 years ago and adopted by Eleanor, her handler. Adrian's breath caught. Stella? That's her real name. Daniel nodded. Handlers often rename retired dogs to help them adjust to civilian life, but military records keep the original name. Eleanor spoke so highly of Stella, her loyalty, intelligence, and courage. Adrian felt a pang of guilt. Eleanor, she passed away. I found her note explaining that she left Stella, or Daisy, to her nephew. But something went wrong. Daniel's face fell. That's tragic. If the dog ended up in the forest, abandoned and injured, someone failed her. Someone betrayed the trust Eleanor placed in them. Dr. Harper, ever practical, interjected. The question is, what do we do now? Stella needs time to recover, but this puppy complicates things. If Stella was abandoned, how did the puppy become part of her story? Adrian glanced at the playful puppy, his curiosity piquing. What if the puppy isn't random? Maybe he's part of why Stella ended up out there, a protector, a companion. There's more to this. Daniel leaned against the counter, his expression thoughtful. We need to find Eleanor's nephew. If he abandoned Stella, he should be held accountable. But if there's more to the story, we owe it to Stella to uncover the truth. Adrian felt torn. What if the nephew didn't mean to abandon her? What if he's unaware of what happened or tried to find her? Dr. Harper chimed in, it's possible. But if someone truly cared for Stella, Wouldn't they have reported her missing or contacted the authorities? As the three debated the possibilities, the doorbell jingled, and a woman entered the clinic. Her face was pale and anxious, and she carried a flyer featuring Stella's photo and the words "Missing Dog, Reward Offered." Adrian stepped forward. "Can I help you?" The woman introduced herself as Lydia. "I'm Eleanor's neighbor. After she passed, her nephew Jared moved in temporarily to settle her estate. I tried to help him adjust, but something felt off. One day, he said Stella ran away. He looked devastated, but I couldn't shake the feeling there was more to the story." Adrian's heart raced. "Did he ever find her?" Lydia shook her head. "I don't think so. He left a few months ago, saying he couldn't bear to stay in Eleanor's house anymore. But I found this flyer recently and thought I'd try again." Daniel held up the photo. "This dog is Stella. She's here, recovering." Lydia's relief was palpable. "Thank God. I knew she deserved better. Please tell me she's okay." Dr. Harper reassured her. "She's healing, but it'll take time. Do you know where Jared might be?" Lydia hesitated. "He mentioned going to a cabin Eleanor used to take him to when he was younger. It's isolated, deep in the woods. He might be there." Adrian felt a surge of determination. "Then we find him. If he has answers, Stella deserves to know the truth." Adrian, Daniel, and Lydia gathered in the clinic's small break room, poring over a map Lydia had brought. She traced her finger along a winding trail leading to the remote cabin Jared might be staying at. "This is where Eleanor used to take Jared when he was young," Lydia explained. "It's peaceful, surrounded by trees and a small creek. She used to say it was a sanctuary for both her and Stella after her retirement." Adrian studied the map. If Jared is there, maybe he's been struggling with guilt or grief. Losing Eleanor and Stella might have been too much. Daniel, ever skeptical, folded his arms. Or he's hiding. If he abandoned Stella and left her to fend for herself, he might not want to face the consequences. Lydia interjected, her voice trembling. "Jared adored Eleanor, and I want to believe he cared for Stella too. But I agree, if he's there, we need to find out what happened. Stella deserves that much." Dr. Harper entered the room, holding a clipboard. "Stella's strong enough for a short trip, but only if she's handled carefully. The pup should stay here, he's still too young for travel." Adrian looked toward the recovery room where Stella rested. She might recognize the place if it was her sanctuary. It could help her heal emotionally too. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Taking Stella is risky. What if Jared reacts badly? Or worse, what if he's not there?" Adrian's resolve hardened. "Then we'll know we tried. Stella didn't give up, and neither will I." The next morning, Adrian loaded Stella into his car, her movements still cautious but more confident. Lydia sat in the passenger seat, holding the map, while Daniel followed in his truck with supplies. The drive toward the cabin grew increasingly treacherous, the paved roads giving way to dirt paths riddled with potholes. As they neared the cabin, Adrian noticed Stella's ears perk up, her nose twitching. "She remembers this place," he said quietly, his heart swelling with hope. When the cabin came into view, it was both idyllic and eerie. The weathered wood structure stood against a backdrop of towering trees, its windows reflecting the morning sunlight. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, confirming someone was inside. Daniel parked his truck behind Adrian's car, stepping out cautiously. "This is it. Let's hope he's willing to talk." Adrian led Stella up the creaky porch steps, knocking firmly on the door. For a moment, there was silence. Then the door opened a crack, revealing a gaunt, disheveled man. His eyes darted between Adrian and Stella before widening in recognition. "Stella?" Jared's voice cracked, his hand gripping the doorframe for support. "Is that her?" "She's here." Adrian said firmly, "We need answers. What happened to her? Why did you leave her?" Jared's face contorted with guilt as he opened the door wider. "Come in. I'll explain inside." The cabin was sparse but clean, with a faint scent of wood smoke lingering in the air. Jared motioned for them to sit while he remained standing, pacing nervously. "I loved Stella," he began, his voice trembling. "When Eleanor passed, I thought I could handle taking care of her. But the grief, it was too much. Stella reminded me of everything I'd lost. I didn't abandon her on purpose. One day, she got loose, and I couldn't find her. I searched for weeks, but I failed." Adrian felt a surge of frustration. "Why didn't you report her missing? Why didn't you tell someone?" Jared looked down, shame etched across his face. "I didn't want to admit I'd failed Elena. I thought if I couldn't find Stella, I didn't deserve to keep searching. I thought she'd find her way back, like she always did. Lydia spoke up, her voice steady but firm. She didn't. She was injured and alone. If Adrian hadn't found her, she might not have survived. Jared sank into a chair, his hands trembling. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I never stopped loving her. Stella, who had been lying quietly by Adrian's feet, suddenly stood and approached Jared. Her movements were tentative but purposeful. Jared's eyes filled with tears as Stella nudged his hand with her nose. She remembers me, he whispered, his voice breaking. Even after everything, she remembers. Adrian felt a lump in his throat. Dogs don't hold grudges, Jared. But they do deserve care and respect. If you're willing to take responsibility, there's a chance to make things right. The next morning, Adrian loaded Stella into his car, her movements still cautious but more confident. Lydia sat in the passenger seat, holding the map, while Daniel followed in his truck with supplies. The drive toward the cabin grew increasingly treacherous, the paved roads giving way to dirt paths riddled with potholes. As they neared the cabin, Adrian noticed Stella's ears perk up, her nose twitching. She remembers this place, he said quietly, his heart swelling with hope. When the cabin came into view, it was both idyllic and eerie. The weathered wood structure stood against a backdrop of towering trees, its windows reflecting the morning sunlight. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, confirming someone was inside. Daniel parked his truck behind Adrian's car, stepping out cautiously. This is it. Let's hope he's willing to talk. Adrian led Stella up the creaky porch steps, knocking firmly on the door. For a moment, there was silence. Then the door opened a crack, revealing a gaunt, disheveled man. His eyes darted between Adrian and Stella before widening in recognition. Stella? Jared's voice cracked, his hand gripping the doorframe for support. Is that her? She's here. Adrian said firmly, we need answers. What happened to her? Why did you leave her? Jared's face contorted with guilt as he opened the door wider. Come in. I'll explain inside. The cabin was sparse but clean, with a faint scent of wood smoke lingering in the air. Jared motioned for them to sit while he remained standing, pacing nervously. I loved Stella, he began, his voice trembling. When Eleanor passed, I thought I could handle taking care of her. But the grief, it was too much. Stella reminded me of everything I'd lost. I didn't abandon her on purpose. One day, she got loose, and I couldn't find her. I searched for weeks, but I failed. Adrian felt a surge of frustration. Why didn't you report her missing? Why didn't you tell someone? Jared looked down, shame etched across his face. I didn't want to admit I'd failed Eleanor. I thought if I couldn't find Stella, I didn't deserve to keep searching. I thought she'd find her way back, like she always did. Lydia spoke up, her voice steady but firm. She didn't. She was injured and alone. If Adrian hadn't found her, she might not have survived. Jared sank into a chair, his hands trembling. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I never stopped loving her. Stella, who had been lying quietly by Adrian's feet, suddenly stood and approached Jared. Her movements were tentative but purposeful. Jared's eyes filled with tears as Stella nudged his hand with her nose. She remembers me, he whispered, his voice breaking. Even after everything, she remembers. Adrian felt a lump in his throat. Dogs don't hold grudges, Jared. But they do deserve care and respect. If you're willing to take responsibility, there's a chance to make things right. As the group discussed a plan for Stella's care, Daniel stepped outside to retrieve supplies from his truck. The crisp forest air greeted him, but something felt off. His instincts, honed by years of experience as a park ranger, kicked in. He scanned the surroundings, his eyes narrowing at movement near the tree line. Adrian, Daniel called, stepping back into the cabin. We might have company. Adrian's brow furrowed as he stood. What do you mean? Daniel pointed toward the window. I saw movement. Could be a coyote or something else. Either way, we should check it out. Jared stiffened. Coyotes don't usually come this close to the cabin unless something's drawn them in. Adrian and Daniel exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. Grabbing a flashlight and a sturdy walking stick, Adrian nodded. Let's go. Outside, the forest was eerily quiet, the only sounds coming from the crunch of leaves underfoot. Dan led the way, his flashlight cutting through the shadows. Adrian followed closely, his senses on high alert. They didn't have to search long. At the edge of the property, they found what had drawn the attention of wildlife, a torn bag of dog food scattered near the trees. Tracks surrounded the area, too large to be coyotes but not quite human. Adrian crouched, examining the prints. These don't look like wild animals. Someone's been here. Daniel's jaw tightened. Probably the same person who left the food to attract coyotes. Whoever it was, they wanted Stella vulnerable. Adrian stood, his grip tightening on the walking stick. We need to get back to the cabin now. Back inside, Jared and Lydia were tending to Stella when Adrian and Daniel burst through the door, their urgency palpable. We've got a problem, Adrian said quickly, explaining what they'd found. Someone's been here, and they're not friendly. Jared's expression darkened. This cabin was supposed to be a safe haven. If someone's targeting Stella, they might not stop with her. Lydia's voice wavered. Why would anyone want to hurt Stella? She's just a dog. Adrian shook his head. She's more than that. If someone thinks she's worth something, maybe as a rare breed or for her connection to Eleanor, they might see her as a prize. Jared stood, his determination solidifying. We're not going to let anyone take her. This is my fault for leaving her unprotected, but I won't let it happen again. Adrian placed a reassuring hand on Jared's shoulder. We'll protect her together, but we need to be smart about this. The tension in the cabin was almost suffocating as Jared and Adrian prepared to confront whoever or whatever was lurking outside. Daniel stood by the window, his sharp eyes scanning the dimly lit perimeter for movement. Lydia stayed close to Stella, whispering soothing words to keep her calm, though her own hands trembled with fear. Adrian motioned to Jared, holding a flashlight in one hand and gripping the walking stick in the other. We go slow, stick together, and don't make any sudden moves. Whoever's out there, they're counting on fear to control us. Jared nodded, swallowing hard. His gaze flicked toward Stella, who lifted her head slightly, as if sensing the unease. Let's do this, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. As they stepped onto the porch, the cool night air hit them, carrying the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional creak of branches. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing little more than shadows and the outlines of the forest. Adrian's grip on the walking stick tightened. Stay alert, he murmured, his voice barely audible. The crunch of gravel underfoot drew their attention to the side of the cabin. Jared pointed toward the faint outline of a figure crouched low near the scattered dog food. Adrian raised the flashlight, the beam landing on a man dressed in ragged clothes, his face partially obscured by a hood. Hey! Adrian called out, his voice firm. Who are you, and what are you doing here? The man froze, his hands hovering near the ground. Slowly, he rose to his feet, his movements deliberate as the flashlight illuminated his face. It became clear he was no stranger to hard times. His face was gaunt, and his eyes held a mix of defiance and desperation. I don't want any trouble, the man said, his voice rough. I didn't mean to scare anyone. Jared stepped forward, his tone sharp. Then why were you sneaking around my property? What do you want? The man hesitated, glancing toward the cabin before his gaze landed on Jared. I heard about the dog, he admitted. The one that survived all this way. People talk, you know. A dog like that, people think she's worth something. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Worth something? You mean to sell her? The man shrugged, his shoulders sagging under an invisible weight. I don't know. I just wanted to see for myself. Some folks think she's valuable, but I wasn't going to hurt her, I swear. Jared's fists clenched at his sides. You think she's just a commodity? She's not something to be traded or sold. She's part of my family. The man raised his hands in a placating gesture. Look, I get it. I messed up coming here, but there are others, people who won't just walk away. The man's words hung heavy in the air, a chilling reminder that their troubles might just be beginning. Adrian exchanged a glance with Jared, his mind racing. If word had spread about Stella, it wouldn't be long before more opportunists, or worse, showed up. Why did you come alone? Adrian pressed, his tone firm. Are you scouting for someone? The man shook his head vehemently. No, I swear. I came on my own. But I overheard a group talking about heading this way. Said something about claiming what's theirs. Jared's stomach churned. What do you mean, what's theirs? Stella doesn't belong to anyone but me. The man hesitated, his gaze dropping to the ground. I think they mean her, because of her connection to Eleanor. They think she might have been trained for something valuable. Adrian's jaw tightened. Eleanor was a retired dog trainer, and Stella's an exceptional dog. But that doesn't give anyone the right to target her. The man took a step back, his movements hesitant. I'm telling you what I know. Take it or leave it. But if I were you, I'd be ready for trouble. Jared's voice hardened as he took a step closer to the man. You'd better hope you're telling the truth. If you're lying or leading those people here. Adrian placed a hand on Jared's shoulder, interrupting him. We're not going to waste time with threats.